Master Chief Derek Lawson's fist cut through the morning air with 15 years of combat power behind it, the kind of punch that had ended bar fights and broken jaws. It never connected. In 3.2 seconds, the most feared instructor at Naval Special Warfare Command was face down in the dirt, his own zip ties binding his wrists, his service weapon disassembled 3 feet away. 282 elite SEALs stood frozen. The woman who just destroyed him looked maybe 25, 5'5", dark curly hair in a tactical bun, no rank insignia, no name tape. She hadn't even broken a sweat. Coronado Naval Base, 0700 hours. The morning that rewrote everything these warriors thought they knew about strength, respect, and the catastrophic price of underestimating the wrong person. If you want to see how this satisfying moment of justice unfolded, subscribe to my channel and follow this story to the very end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me take you back to the beginning. The Pacific Ocean crashed against the Coronado coastline with the same relentless rhythm it had maintained for 10,000 years. But this morning something different moved through the salt air, something that would shatter 15 years of carefully constructed authority in less than 3 hours. Master Chief Petty Officer Derek Lawson stood at the edge of the training yard, coffee steam rising into the California dawn, watching his domain with the satisfaction of a king surveying his kingdom. 15 years he had built this reputation. 15 years of being the man nobody crossed. 15 years of making anyone who didn't belong feel exactly how unwelcome they were. The SEALs feared him. The officers respected him. The enlisted men told stories about him in hushed tones over beers at the Coronado Brewing Company. Lawson liked it that way. "Beautiful morning for breaking spirits," Senior Chief Warren Hayes said, joining him with his own coffee. "Fresh meat today. Always fresh meat." Lawson smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "Question is whether they're worth the effort of grinding down." The formations had already assembled across the training yard. 282 of the most elite warriors in the United States military standing in perfect rectangles that testified to discipline forged through the most brutal training program on Earth. These were the men who operated in the spaces between official military action and political deniability. The men who went where others couldn't, did what others wouldn't, and came home without ever discussing what happened. Lawson had helped shape many of them, and he intended to keep shaping them until the day he retired. That was when he saw her. At first his brain didn't register what his eyes were showing him. A woman. Near the formation line. Not in uniform. Not carrying visitor credentials. Not accompanied by any escort. Just standing there. Dark curly hair pulled back in what looked like a tactical bun. Black workout clothes that could have been civilian athletic wear. Maybe 5'5" athletic build, moving with a looseness that suggested either complete ignorance of where she was or complete confidence that she belonged there. Lawson's coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "Hayes, you seeing what I'm seeing? Some lost civilian? Probably looking for the gift shop. Gift shop's on the other side of base. So she's really lost." Lawson handed Hayes his coffee and started walking. His stride was purposeful, his shoulders squared, his expression shifting into the mask of authority he'd perfected over 15 years of making people feel small. The SEALs in formation noticed his movement. Then they noticed what he was moving toward. Conversations died. Attention shifted. 282 pairs of eyes tracked the developing situation with the predatory awareness their training had instilled. Entertainment in a place where entertainment was scarce. The woman didn't turn as Lawson approached. She was studying the formation with an expression he couldn't quite read. Her eyes swept left to right, then back again, pausing on individual seals with the kind of focused assessment that made him uncomfortable in ways he didn't want to examine. Well, well, well. His voice carried across the morning air like a blade. Looks like someone's girlfriend wandered onto the wrong playground. She still didn't turn. Hey, I'm talking to you, sweetheart. Now she turned, slowly, deliberately, like she had all the time in the world, and his authority meant absolutely nothing to her. Dark eyes met his without flinching. Lawson felt something shift in his chest. Something that might have been warning if he'd been smart enough to recognize it. This is a restricted training facility. He continued, volume rising to ensure maximum audience. The gift shop is back that way, unless you're here to deliver someone's lunch. Scattered laughter rippled through the formation. Someone wolf whistled. Another voice called out, "Easy on her, Chief. She might cry." More laughter. The woman's expression didn't change. "I'm exactly where I need to be, Master Chief." The laughter stopped. Lawson felt his jaw tighten. The way she said his rank, not deferential, not nervous, like she was confirming something she already knew rather than responding to his authority. Is that so? That's so. And where exactly is that? Naval Special Warfare Command, Training Facility Alpha, evaluating operational readiness and personnel conduct. She paused. So far, I'm not impressed. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes explosions. Hayes moved up beside Lawson, sensing the situation escalating beyond simple civilian removal. "Ma'am, you're going to need to show us some identification and authorization. Are you familiar with Regulation 723, Senior Chief, the one governing external evaluation protocols?" Hayes blinked. The regulation she cited was real. It was also classified at levels that most SEALs didn't know existed. "How do you know about 723? "Because I helped write the update last fiscal year." The claim hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Civilians didn't write military regulations. Contractors sometimes provided input, but the phrasing she used suggested direct authorship. Direct authorship required security clearances that most admirals didn't possess. Lawson's face had shifted from condescension to something darker. Something that looked a lot like threatened territory. "I don't know what game you're playing, sweetheart, but it ends now. You're either going to produce valid credentials, or you're going to be escorted off this base in handcuffs. I have credentials. I have..." "Then show them." "They need to know. You don't need to know." Someone in the formation inhaled sharply. In 15 years, Lawson had never been spoken to like this. Not by officers, not by civilians, not by anyone who wanted to keep walking without assistance. "You think this is funny? I think this is exactly what I came to evaluate." "And what's that?" "How your leadership responds to unexpected situations. How authority handles challenges. Whether professionalism or ego drives decision-making." She tilted her head slightly. "The results so far are concerning." Lieutenant Commander James Thornton watched from the command platform binoculars pressed to his eyes, radio in hand. 22 years of naval service had taught him to recognize trouble before it fully materialized. This was trouble. "Run a background check," he said into his radio. "Female, approximately mid-20s, dark hair, athletic build. Currently engaging Master Chief Lawson near Formation 7. "Sir, that'll take time without more specific identifiers." "Then start now." "Copy." Thornton lowered the binoculars, but kept watching. The woman's posture bothered him, not because it was wrong, because it was right. The way she stood, weight balanced back, never fully presented to open space eyes, constantly tracking peripheral movement while maintaining focus on the primary threat. That wasn't civilian body language. That was operator body language. Down on the training yard, Petty Officer First Class Marcus Webb stood in formation with SEAL Team 4 trying to control the tremor that had started in his hands. He knew that face. God help him, he knew that face. Mogadishu. 18 months ago. The operation that officially never happened. His team had been ambushed during what was supposed to be a routine intelligence extraction. RPGs had turned their vehicles into burning coffins. Half his team had died in the first 30 seconds. Webb remembered the chaos, the screaming, the certainty that he was going to die in a foreign country for a mission that would be officially denied. And then she had appeared. Moving through the carnage like death itself had taken human form. Pulling survivors from wreckage while rounds snapped overhead. Calling in air support that wasn't supposed to exist for an operation that wasn't supposed to be happening. Staying calm while the world exploded around her. He still didn't know her name. The operation had been so compartmentalized that different elements never crossed paths again. But he remembered her face. He remembered her voice. He remembered thinking that if angels existed, they didn't carry harps. They carried suppressed MP7s and spoke with the quiet authority of people who had killed before and would kill again without hesitation. "You good, Webb?" The whisper came from Petty Officer Chen beside him. "Fine." The lie tasted like copper. If she was here, something had either gone very right or catastrophically wrong with operational security. Either way, watching Lawson try to intimidate her was like watching a house cat threaten a Bengal tiger. Someone was about to learn something painful. The communications array malfunction happened at 0712. One moment tactical frequencies were crystal clear. The next static drowned everything like electronic white noise. Radios squawked useless feedback. The training coordination network collapsed. "We've got a comms failure," announced Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, jogging toward the command platform. "Primary array is down. Backup showing intermittent connectivity." Thornton felt his stomach drop. Communication failures during training exercises created cascading problems that could take hours to resolve. Specialists would need to be called in. Schedules would collapse. Accountability reports would need to be filed. His career didn't need this today. The woman moved toward the communications equipment before anyone could stop her. "Ma'am, step away from that equipment," Lawson barked. She ignored him. Her hands were already moving across the control panels with the kind of familiarity that suggested muscle memory rather than improvisation. "Frequency interference from the storm system moving in from the northwest," she announced. "Same pattern that hit us during Operation Resolute Storm in the Hindu Kush. You compensate by shifting to Delta Band and increasing signal amplification by 14%. Her fingers made adjustments with surgical precision. The radio crackled back to life. Crystal clear. Perfect transmission quality. 60 seconds. Maybe less. "That's not civilian training," Rodriguez said quietly. "That's not even regular military training," replied Senior Chief Brooks, who had drifted closer to observe. Thornton lifted his radio. "Base operations expedite that background check. Priority Alpha." "Sir, we're running into classification barriers. The subject's information appears to be locked at levels requiring what? Silence. Then, flag officer authorization, sir. Possibly higher." Flag officer authorization meant admirals. Possibly higher meant something Thornton didn't want to think about too carefully. People whose files required that kind of clearance didn't accidentally wander onto training facilities. They arrived with purpose, and that purpose usually meant someone's career was about to implode. He watched Lawson's face contort through emotions like a slot machine spinning toward bankruptcy. Confusion, anger, wounded pride, deeper anger. I don't care what you think you just did, Lawson said, stepping closer to the woman. You're still unauthorized personnel on a restricted military installation, and you're still going to answer my questions. I've answered your questions. You've given me riddles and attitude. I've given you exactly what your behavior has earned. The SEALs in formation were no longer even pretending to maintain discipline. Every eye was locked on the confrontation, every ear strained to catch every word. This was better than any training exercise. This was real. What's that supposed to mean? It means that in 7 minutes of interaction, you've demonstrated harassment, gender-based discrimination, failure to follow verification protocols, and escalating aggression toward an unknown contact. If I were actually a threat, you'd have already compromised operational security by revealing the existence of classified regulations, demonstrated predictable behavior patterns that could be exploited, and positioned yourself for exactly the kind of close-quarters vulnerability that gets people killed. She paused, letting the assessment sink in. I came to evaluate operational readiness. What I've found is a command structure that lets ego override procedure and intimidation substitute for leadership. The silence that followed lasted 3 heartbeats. Then Lawson's voice emerged, low, dangerous, stripped of everything except threat. You need to be very careful about your next words. You don't know who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. Her voice carried that same quiet steel. The question is whether you know who you're dealing with. Hayes stepped forward, trying to de-escalate. Ma'am, whatever authority you think you have, this isn't the way to exercise it. Master Chief Lawson is a 15-year veteran with a pattern of behavior that would trigger immediate investigation in any other command structure. She cut him off without raising her voice. Would you like me to continue with the evaluation, or would you prefer to start addressing the deficiencies I've already identified? Webb watched from formation, every muscle tense with the effort of staying silent. He wanted to scream at Lawson to stand down. He wanted to run over there and salute her and tell everyone what she'd done in Mogadishu. He wanted to do something that would stop this collision course before the impact. But speaking would mean revealing classified information. It would mean admitting he'd been somewhere he wasn't supposed to discuss, doing things he wasn't supposed to remember, saved by someone who officially didn't exist. The Mogadishu operation lived in files that required presidential authorization to access. Everyone involved had been briefed on the consequences of disclosure. Some consequences were legal. Some were the kind that happened in places where people asked questions but never received answers. So Webb stayed silent and watched and prayed that Lawson would do something intelligent for once in his arrogant life. Lawson did not do something intelligent. I've had enough of this, he announced. Hayes, contact base security. We're having this individual detained until her identity can be verified through proper channels. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Is that a threat? It's advice, the kind that might save your career if you're smart enough to take it. My career is fine. Your career is approximately 4 bad decisions away from ending. You've already made 3 of them. I'm giving you a chance to not make the 4th. The woman's eyes swept across the assembled SEALs, making contact with dozens of warriors who had operated in every combat zone on Earth. Men who had killed with their hands, their weapons, their intelligence, men who thought they understood what dangerous looked like. Her gaze settled on Webb for just a moment. Something flickered there. Recognition warning. Webb couldn't tell. Then she looked back at Lawson. Make your choice, Master Chief. But understand that once you make it, there's no going back. The physical fitness test began as Thornton's attempt to restore some semblance of normal routine to a morning that had spiraled beyond anyone's control. If this woman insisted on remaining in the training area, then she would participate in training activities. It was a decision born of bureaucratic frustration rather than tactical thinking. A decision that would haunt Thornton for the rest of his career. "Ma'am," announced Master Sergeant Collins, the senior fitness instructor, "if you're going to observe our training, you're going to participate in it. We're running the SEAL Qualification Physical Screening Test this morning." The SQPST represented the highest standard of physical conditioning in the Special Operations community. 3-mile run in under 21 minutes, 25 pull-ups minimum, 500-meter combat swim with full equipment, standards that eliminated 90% of candidates who attempted SEAL training. The woman nodded. "Acceptable. You understand what you're agreeing to." "I understand." Collins exchanged a look with Lawson that communicated shared anticipation. Finally, something that would put this arrogant civilian in her place. Physical fitness didn't care about attitude or mysterious credentials. It cared about capability. And no woman, regardless of her confidence, was going to match the standards that elite male operators spent years developing. 37 SEALs lined up for the 3-mile run. The woman took a position at the back, neither seeking attention nor avoiding it. Simply present. Simply ready. The starting signal cracked across the morning air. The course wound through Coronado's coastal terrain designed to test endurance, mental toughness, and the will to continue when everything in your body screamed to stop. Hills that burned quadriceps. Sand that stole momentum. Ocean wind that pushed back against every stride. The lead pack established itself within the first quarter mile. Young SEALs with something to prove, pushing hard to establish dominance early. Veterans who knew better settled into sustainable paces, conserving energy for the demands ahead. The woman ran somewhere in the middle. Her stride was economical, efficient, suggesting experience with long-distance endurance challenges. She didn't push. She didn't fall back. She just maintained. At the 1-mile mark, Collins checked his stopwatch. She was running with the main pack. Respectable, but nothing special. At the 2-mile mark, she was still with the pack. Some of the early leaders had faded. She had not. At the 2.5-mile mark, she began to pull away. "What the hell?" Collins muttered. By the time she crossed the finish line, she was running alone. 18 minutes and 47 seconds. Faster than 80% of the SEALs who had started with her. She wasn't even breathing hard. The pull-up test followed immediately, designed to exploit the muscle fatigue accumulated during the run. Most SEALs struggled to complete the required 25 repetitions after 3 miles of hill running. She completed 32. Perfect form. Controlled movement. No visible strain. The combat swim presented the final challenge. Full battle dress uniform with equipment that added 40 pounds when waterlogged. 500 meters through Pacific waters that didn't care about reputation or authority. She entered the water with practiced efficiency. Her stroke technique revealed extensive experience with combat swimming protocols. She moved through the ocean like she belonged there, like the water was an ally rather than an obstacle. 11 minutes flat. When she emerged from the Pacific, streaming salt water, but breathing normally, the training yard had fallen into a silence that bordered on reverence. "Ma'am," Collins asked quietly, "where exactly did you serve? Places that don't appear on official maps. What unit? The kind that doesn't exist in any database you have access to." Webb felt his heart hammering against his ribs. Places that don't appear on maps. Units that don't exist. These were phrases that described people like her. People who operated in the spaces between official military action and political deniability. People whose missions were so classified that their existence was denied at congressional level. People who had saved his life in Mogadishu. He couldn't stay silent anymore. The words came out before he could stop them, driven by 18 months of survivor's guilt, and the desperate need to acknowledge what she had done. Mogadishu sends its regards. The woman's composure cracked for the first time. Pain flashed across her features. Genuine, raw, immediate. The kind of pain that came from memories that never fully healed, from operations that cost lives, from decisions that haunted you at 3 in the morning when the world was quiet and the ghosts were loud. She turned to face him. Recognition flickered in her dark eyes. Mogadishu was a long time ago petty officer. Not long enough. The exchange meant nothing to most witnesses, but it meant everything to Thornton, who recognized the coded reference to classified operations in the Horn of Africa region. Operations he wasn't authorized to know existed, let alone discuss. His radio crackled with a transmission that made his blood turn to ice water. "Sir, we're getting pushback from federal agencies on your background check request. They're recommending you terminate the inquiry immediately and await instructions from higher authority." Federal agencies. Instructions from higher authority. Thornton had served 22 years in the United States Navy. He had commanded men in combat. He had made decisions that determined whether people lived or died. But he had never in all those years received instructions that scared him quite as much as the ones coming through his radio right now. "Copy that," he said. "Maintain current posture. No further action without my explicit authorization." Below on the training yard, Lawson watched the exchange between Webb and the mystery woman with the expression of someone who had just discovered the rules of the game he thought he was winning had changed completely. And they were about to change again. Lawson approached Hayes with the careful movements of a predator who had just realized his prey might have teeth. "I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Get Davis, Murphy, and Thompson, the ones who owe us favors." "Why?" "Because this situation needs to be resolved before it gets any more out of control, and I know exactly how to resolve it." Hayes hesitated. There was something in Lawson's eyes he didn't like. Something that had moved past wounded pride into territory that felt dangerous. "Derek, maybe we should just let this play out through official channels." "Official channels are going to bury us, Warren. Federal involvement means investigations. Investigations mean questions. Questions mean answers that neither of us wants to give." "What are you suggesting?" Lawson smiled. It was the coldest expression Hayes had ever seen on a human face. "I'm suggesting we have a private conversation with our mystery visitor. Somewhere without witnesses. Somewhere we can get real answers about who she is and what she's really doing here. And if she doesn't want to have that conversation, everyone wants to have conversations when properly motivated." Hayes felt something cold settle into his stomach. He had followed Lawson for 7 years, had trusted his judgment, had covered for his methods when they pushed against regulations. But this felt different. This felt like a line that once crossed could never be uncrossed. "Derek, are you with me or not?" The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Hayes made his choice. "I'm with you." "Good. Get the men. Meet me at the supply warehouse in 20 minutes. The supply warehouse sat at the edge of the training complex, far enough from the main facilities to provide privacy for activities that required discretion. Built during the Cold War for ammunition storage, it featured thick concrete walls, limited access points, and soundproofing designed to contain explosions. It was also equipped with security cameras that Lawson knew exactly how to disable. As he walked toward the warehouse, Lawson's mind raced through justifications that would cover whatever happened next. Foreign infiltration, intelligence gathering, resistance to lawful detention. the kind of language that transformed crimes into necessary actions and victims into threats that needed to be neutralized. He didn't know who this woman was, but he knew she represented everything that threatened his carefully constructed world. Her competence challenged his authority. Her confidence mocked his methods. Her very presence suggested that everything he had built over 15 years could be torn down by someone who didn't play by his rules. That couldn't be allowed to happen. Whatever it took. Meanwhile, Thornton stared at his radio like it had transformed into a venomous snake. Federal agencies, higher authority, classification barriers that required flag officer authorization. None of this made sense. Civilians didn't possess the kind of credentials that locked out military background checks. Contractors didn't cite classified regulations by number. Women didn't casually discuss operations that were denied at congressional level. Unless she wasn't a civilian. Unless she wasn't a contractor. Unless she was something else entirely. His phone rang. Private line. Unlisted number. Lieutenant Commander Thornton. Commander, this is Admiral Morrison's office. You need to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. 20 minutes later, Thornton stood on the command platform with the expression of a man who had just learned that everything he thought he understood was wrong. The woman was still on the training yard, still surrounded by SEALs who had no idea what they were looking at, still carrying herself with the quiet authority of someone who had earned respect in ways none of them could imagine. And somewhere on his base, Derek Lawson was about to make a decision that would destroy careers, end lives, and trigger federal responses that would reshape Coronado for years to come. Thornton reached for his radio. He was already too late. Hayes found her near the hydration station, toweling off Pacific saltwater with the unhurried movements of someone who had nowhere urgent to be. His approach was careful, measured, designed to appear helpful rather than threatening. Ma'am, there's been a development with your credential verification. She looked up. Those dark eyes assessed him with the same clinical precision she had demonstrated all morning. Hayes felt transparent, like she could see straight through his rehearsed concern to the ugly machinery turning beneath. What kind of development? Lieutenant Commander Thornton needs to verify some information directly. He's asked me to escort you to the administrative facility for processing. Administrative facility. Standard protocol, ma'am. Shouldn't take more than a few minutes. She didn't move. Her stillness carried a weight that made Hayes suddenly aware of his own heartbeat, his own breathing, his own vulnerability. Which administrative facility? Building 7? Supply and logistics. The warehouse. Hayes felt sweat prickle along his spine. She knew. Somehow she already knew. It's been converted for secure interviews, better privacy for sensitive discussions. I'm sure it has. For a long moment, she simply looked at him. Hayes had the unsettling sensation of being catalogued, evaluated, filed away for future reference. Like she was memorizing everything about him for reasons he didn't want to understand. Lead the way, Senior Chief. Hayes almost argued, almost told her she didn't have to come, almost warned her about what was waiting in that warehouse. But 15 years of following Lawson's lead had carved grooves into his decision-making that were too deep to escape now. He turned and walked. She followed. Webb watched them go from his position near Formation 7. His gut twisted with the certainty that something terrible was about to happen. Chen, yeah, something's wrong. Everything's been wrong since that woman showed up. No, something worse. Webb's eyes tracked Hayes and the mystery woman as they moved toward the edge of the training complex. That's not the direction of any administrative building I know. Chen followed his gaze. Supply warehouse. Why would Thornton conduct a credential interview in a supply warehouse? The question answered itself even as Webb asked it. He remembered Lawson's expression during the confrontation. The wounded pride, the simmering rage, the look of a man who had been publicly humiliated and was calculating exactly how to make someone pay for it. Oh no. Webb, I need to find Lieutenant Commander Thornton, right now. Webb broke formation and ran. The supply warehouse smelled like diesel fuel and old concrete. The woman cataloged every detail as Hayes led her through the entrance. Distance to exits, potential weapons, sight lines, cover positions. The instinctive threat assessment of someone who had survived situations where such calculations meant the difference between breathing and bleeding out. Lawson was waiting inside, flanked by 3 SEALs she didn't recognize. Davis Murphy and Thompson, young enough to be impressionable, old enough to know better, the kind of men who followed orders without asking questions they didn't want answered. "Thank you, Hayes." Lawson's voice echoed slightly in the cavernous space. "Secure the entrance." Hayes moved to comply, and something in his expression told her everything she needed to know about how this was supposed to end. "Gentlemen," she said calmly, "you're making a mistake. The only mistake was letting you walk around this base like you belonged here." Lawson stepped closer, and the 3 SEALs shifted to create a loose perimeter around her. Practiced. Coordinated. The kind of movement that suggested this wasn't their first time cornering someone in an isolated location. "Master Chief, whatever you think is happening here, you're wrong. What I think is happening is that an unidentified foreign agent has infiltrated a United States military installation. What I think is happening is that agent has demonstrated advanced combat training, technical knowledge of classified systems, and familiarity with operational protocols that no civilian should possess." Foreign agent? Russian? Maybe Chinese. The tradecraft is impressive, I'll give you that. But it ends here. She almost laughed. Would have if the situation weren't so dangerous for everyone involved. "You think I'm a spy? I think you're a threat to national security. And I think threats to national security get handled in ways that don't involve lawyers or congressional oversight." The implication hung in the air like smoke from a fire that hadn't quite started burning yet. "You're talking about murder." "I'm talking about neutralizing an enemy combatant who infiltrated a restricted military facility. The paperwork writes itself." Davis shifted uncomfortably. "Master Chief, maybe we should—" "Did I ask for your opinion, Corporal?" "No, Master Chief." "Then maintain your position and let me handle this." The woman's eyes moved across the 5 men surrounding her. Hayes blocking the entrance, Lawson directly in front, 3 SEALs forming a triangle behind. Standard containment formation for a single target. They had numbers. They had positioning. They had the confidence of men who had never lost a fight they intended to win. They had no idea what they were dealing with. "Last chance, Master Chief. Walk away. Pretend this never happened. I'm giving you an exit that doesn't end your career." Lawson smiled. It was the expression of someone who believed he held all the cards. "Sweetheart, you're not in a position to give anyone anything." He reached for his sidearm. The woman moved. Later, when they reviewed what happened, none of the witnesses could agree on exactly what they saw. It was too fast, too fluid, too far outside their experience of how human bodies were supposed to move. Lawson's hand touched his weapon. Then he was on the ground. She had closed the distance between them in the time it took him to blink. Her left hand controlled his weapon arm, redirecting it away from the holster with a grip that sent pain shooting up to his shoulder. Her right hand struck something in his neck that made his vision blur and his knees buckle. The takedown was elegant in its brutality. She used his own momentum against him, redirecting his weight into a spiral that ended with his face pressed against concrete and his arm locked behind his back at an angle that promised permanent damage if he struggled. "Secure him!" Hayes shouted. Davis, Murphy, and Thompson rushed forward. They might as well have been moving through water. She released Lawson and pivoted to face the first attacker. Davis threw a punch that she deflected with her forearm, simultaneously stepping inside his guard and driving an elbow into his solar plexus. He doubled over gasping, and she used his bent position as a fulcrum to throw him into Murphy, who was approaching from her right. The two men went down in a tangle of limbs. Thompson had the presence of mind to create distance, dropping into a combat stance that suggested actual training. She respected that. It wouldn't save him, but she respected it. "You can still walk away from this petty officer." "Can't do that, ma'am. You're going to get hurt." "Maybe, but I've got orders. Orders from a man who just tried to murder a federal asset. You might want to reconsider whose orders you're following." Thompson hesitated. The hesitation cost him. She closed the distance before he could react, slipping past his guard with a combination of strikes that targeted nerve clusters and pressure points rather than bone and muscle. It was the fighting style of someone trained to incapacitate rather than kill. Precise. Controlled. Devastatingly effective. Thompson hit the ground conscious but unable to move, his nervous system temporarily overwhelmed by pain signals that made his limbs refuse commands. Hayes had drawn his weapon during the chaos. He leveled it at her with hands that shook more than he wanted to admit. "Don't move." She turned to face him. Her breathing was slightly elevated but nowhere near labored. The entire engagement had taken less than 20 seconds. "Senior Chief, put the weapon down." "I said don't move. If I wanted you unconscious, you would be unconscious. I'm trying to give you a chance to make a better decision than your Master Chief. You just assaulted 4 Navy SEALs. I just defended myself against 4 men who were preparing to murder me. There's a difference." On the ground, Lawson groaned and tried to push himself up. His arm wasn't broken, but it felt like fire had been poured into every joint from shoulder to fingertip. "Hayes," he gasped. "Shoot her." Hayes's finger tightened on the trigger. "Shoot her now." "Senior Chief." Her voice cut through the chaos with surgical precision. "You have approximately 3 seconds to lower that weapon. After that, I'm going to assume you're complicit in an attempted murder and respond accordingly. She's a foreign agent. This is a matter of national security. 1. Hayes's hands shook harder. 2. The barrel of his weapon wavered. 3. The warehouse door exploded inward. Webb burst through first, followed by Thornton and a half-dozen armed SEALs who clearly had no idea what they were walking into. Their weapons swept the space, identifying targets, assessing threats, trying to make sense of a scene that defied easy explanation. 4 men on the ground. 1 woman standing. 1 senior chief with a drawn weapon pointed at someone who appeared completely unarmed. "Everyone freeze," Thornton commanded. Hayes lowered his weapon immediately. The training took over, overriding whatever loyalty to Lawson had been guiding his actions. "Commander," the woman said, "your timing is impeccable." Thornton stared at her, then at Lawson, who was still struggling to rise, then at Davis, Murphy, and Thompson, who were in various stages of recovery from the fastest takedowns he had ever witnessed. What the hell happened here? Your Master Chief attempted to detain and murder a federal asset under the pretext of a foreign infiltration investigation. His senior chief was about to execute that order when you arrived. "That's not," Lawson started. "Shut up, Derek." Thornton's voice carried the weight of 22 years of command authority. "I received a very interesting phone call while you were in here playing spy hunter, a phone call from Admiral Morrison's office. Would you like to know what they told me?" Lawson's face went pale. "They told me that the woman you just tried to kill is Commander Natasha Reyes, callsign Shadow Phoenix, assigned to the Joint Special Operations Command, under classification protocols, that require presidential authorization to access. The revelation hit the warehouse like a physical force. Commander. Not civilian. Not contractor. Not foreign agent. A military officer who outranked everyone present. They told me she's been conducting an authorized evaluation of our operational readiness and personnel conduct, an evaluation that you just failed in the most spectacular way possible. Lawson opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. They told me that if any harm came to her during her time at this facility, the people responsible would face court-martial proceedings under federal jurisdiction, not military jurisdiction. Federal. The kind where military lawyers don't get to protect their own. Hayes dropped his weapon like it had turned to poison in his hands. "Commander Thornton," Reyes said, "I appreciate the cavalry, but I had the situation under control." "I can see that." Thornton looked at the 4 men she had incapacitated. "I'm beginning to understand why Admiral Morrison's office sounded so concerned about your safety. Not for your sake, for the sake of anyone stupid enough to threaten you. The Master Chief made his choices. His men were following orders they shouldn't have followed. There's a distinction. Is there? Hayes was 3 seconds from committing murder because a superior told him to. Davis, Murphy, and Thompson engaged a target they had been told was a foreign threat. One of those situations is corruption. The other is misplaced loyalty. The consequences should reflect that distinction. Thornton studied her for a long moment. This woman had just single-handedly neutralized 5 SEALs who had been trying to kill her. She had every right to demand their destruction. Every justification to let federal prosecutors tear their careers apart. Instead, she was arguing for proportional response. "What do you recommend?" Lawson faces court-martial. He made a conscious decision to attempt murder under color of authority. Hayes receives administrative discipline and psychological evaluation. His compliance was driven by institutional loyalty rather than personal malice. The 3 junior SEALs receive retraining and counseling. They were following orders from people they trusted. That's generous. Justice should be proportional to culpability. Lawson is culpable. The others are guilty of poor judgment under pressure. There's a difference. Webb stood at the edge of the gathered SEALs, watching the exchange with something like awe. In Mogadishu, she had saved his life. Here she was, saving the careers of men who had just tried to end hers. He understood now why people followed her, why they would walk into fire for her, why they would die for her. She led with something that had nothing to do with rank or authority. She led with honor. Thornton turned to the SEALs who had accompanied him. "Secure Master Chief Lawson and Senior Chief Hayes. Medical attention for Davis, Murphy, and Thompson. No one speaks about what happened here until I've had time to coordinate with federal oversight." "Yes, sir." As the SEALs moved to comply, Lawson found his voice. "This isn't over." Reyes looked at him with something that might have been pity. "For you, Master Chief, it's been over since the moment you decided that intimidation and murder were acceptable substitutes for leadership. You just didn't know it yet. You think you're better than me? I think I'm different from you. Better is a judgment that history will make." They hauled him to his feet and toward the door. His eyes never left her face. Hatred burned in them. Hatred and something else. Something that looked like fear finally recognizing what it should have seen from the beginning. The warehouse fell quiet. Webb stepped forward before he could stop himself. "Commander Reyes." She turned. Recognition flickered in her eyes. "Petty Officer Webb, you ran fast." "Not fast enough. I should have gotten here sooner." "You got here exactly when you were supposed to. Some confrontations need to happen for the lessons to take hold." "Is that why you let them take you to the warehouse? You knew what Lawson was planning." "I knew what kind of man he was, Men like that always reveal themselves when they think they have power over someone vulnerable. I gave him the opportunity to make a choice. He chose poorly. You could have been killed. The possibility existed. And you let it happen anyway. Sometimes you have to demonstrate the disease before people will accept the cure. If I had revealed my identity at the beginning, Lawson would have modified his behavior. The underlying corruption would have remained hidden. Now it's exposed. Now it can be addressed. Webb thought about that, about the risk she had taken, about the men who would face consequences because she had been willing to put herself in danger. In Mogadishu, you said something to me, when you were pulling me out of the wreckage. I've never forgotten it. What did I say? You said, "Not today." Just that. Not today. Like death was something you could negotiate with. Reyes smiled. It transformed her face, made her look younger, made her look like someone who hadn't spent years in the spaces where people died for decisions made in distant conference rooms. Some days you negotiate with death. Some days you negotiate with life. The trick is knowing which conversation you're having. Which conversation was this? This was a conversation with the future. The men Lawson trained would have carried his poison into their own commands. His methods would have spread. His attitudes would have infected others. Today, that stops. Because you were willing to die to stop it. Because I was willing to do what the situation required. Sometimes that means fighting. Sometimes that means dying. Sometimes it means giving someone mercy they don't deserve. She paused. Speaking of which, I need to have a conversation with your lieutenant commander about operational security. Mogadishu. You broke protocol by referencing it publicly. We need to discuss how that gets handled. Webb's stomach dropped. Am I in trouble? You're in a situation that requires navigation. There's a difference. Come on, petty officer. Let's go find out what kind of day this becomes. They walked out of the warehouse together. Behind them, the concrete walls held secrets that would never appear in any official report. The blood that Lawson had intended to spill. The murder he had planned to commit. The careers he had been willing to destroy to protect his ego. All of it would vanish into classification protocols and administrative processing. But the lessons would remain. The SEALs who had witnessed the morning's events would carry them forever. Outside, the California sun had risen, fully burning away the morning fog and illuminating a training yard that would never quite feel the same. 282 elite warriors had watched a woman walk onto their base and dismantle everything they thought they knew about strength, authority, and the true meaning of power. Some would resent her for it. Most would thank her. All of them would remember. Thornton was waiting near the command platform, radio in hand, face tight with the expression of someone trying to manage a crisis that exceeded his preparation. Commander Reyes, we need to talk. Yes, we do. Federal Oversight is requesting a full briefing. They want to know everything that happened here today. Federal Oversight will get exactly what they need to know. Nothing more. This involves potential criminal charges against a Master Chief with 15 years of decorated service. This involves attempted murder of a federal asset. The decorated service is no longer relevant. Thornton looked at her. Really looked. Saw the exhaustion behind the composure. The weight of decisions that would affect lives for years to come. The loneliness of being the person who had to make those decisions while everyone else got to simply follow orders. How do you do it? He asked quietly. Do what? Carry all of this. The authority, the responsibility, the knowledge that your choices determine whether people live or die. Reyes considered the question. Around them, the training yard continued its morning routines. SEALs running drills, instructors barking commands, the machinery of military preparation grinding forward regardless of the human dramas unfolding at its edges. You don't carry it alone, she finally said. You find people worth trusting. You make decisions worth making. And when you're wrong, you accept the consequences and try to be less wrong the next time. What if you can't accept the consequences? Then you shouldn't have the authority. Thornton nodded slowly. It was the answer he expected. It was also the answer he needed. What happens now? Now we document what happened, file the appropriate reports, let the system do what systems do. And Lawson faces the consequences of his choices, just like everyone else. Some people are going to say you set him up, that you deliberately provoked him into revealing his true nature. Some people can say whatever they want. The truth is simpler. I gave him the opportunity to be a better man. He chose not to take it. That's not entrapment. That's character revelation. The radio in Thornton's hand crackled with an incoming transmission. He listened for a moment, his expression shifting through surprise, concern, and finally something that looked like resignation. Commander, there's been a development. What kind of development? We're receiving priority traffic from JSOC. They're requesting your immediate return to operational status. Requesting ordering. Reyes closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, the brief vulnerability she had shown was gone, replaced by the steel that had carried her through a decade of operations that would never be acknowledged. What's the mission? They didn't say, just that a helicopter is inbound for extraction and that you need to be ready for deployment within the hour. The evaluation will have to be completed by someone else. They were very clear about that. Webb watched from nearby, close enough to hear, far enough to pretend he wasn't listening. The conversation confirmed what he had suspected since recognizing her this morning. Whatever she had been doing at Coronado, it was never the main event. It was an interlude, a pause between operations that mattered more than training evaluations or personnel assessments. The quiet ones never stopped working. They just changed locations. Commander Reyes, Webb stepped forward. Whatever happens next, whatever mission is calling you back, I want you to know something. What's that petty officer? Mogadishu changed me. What you did that night changed me. I'm not the same person I was before, and I think I'm better for it. Are you? I hope so. Reyes studied him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised everyone watching. She extended her hand. Webb took it. Stay alive, Petty Officer Webb. The world needs people who can be changed by the things they survive. It has enough people who survive unchanged. Yes, ma'am. She released his hand and turned to Thornton. Lieutenant Commander, thank you for the cavalry, even if it was unnecessary. You're welcome, even if you didn't need it. I'll file my preliminary evaluation before departure. Spoiler alert, there are significant areas for improvement. I never doubted it. The sound of helicopter rotors began to build in the distance. The extraction was coming. Whatever waited on the other side was about to begin. Reyes walked toward the landing zone without looking back. Behind her, 282 SEALs watched the woman who had walked onto their base that morning and dismantled every assumption they held about strength, authority, and the true meaning of power. Some of them would never see her again. All of them would remember her forever. The quiet ones always left marks, even when they disappeared without a trace. The MH-60S Seahawk touched down with the controlled violence of military precision rotor wash, flattening everything within 50 meters into submission. Reyes walked toward it without hesitation, her stride carrying the weight of someone who had done this 1,000 times before and would do it 1,000 times again. Chief Petty Officer Nathan Cole met her at the door, extending a hand to help her aboard. She took it, hauled herself into the aircraft, and settled into position among equipment configured for immediate deployment. Commander, good to see you intact. Was there doubt? With you, never. With the people around you, always. The helicopter lifted off before the door was fully secured. Below Coronado shrank into a postcard image of military infrastructure and California coastline. The SEALs who had witnessed the morning's events became dots, then disappeared entirely. Reyes felt the transition happen. The evaluation was over. The mission was beginning. Everything between those 2 points was already fading into memory. "Briefing," she said. Cole handed her a tablet displaying classified intelligence that made her blood run cold. Jamal al-Rashid. Ring any bells? The name hit her like a physical blow. Mogadishu. The same. He's resurfaced. Yemen border region approximately 40 kilometers from the Saudi frontier. Intelligence indicates he's planning something big. Timeline is 72 hours, maybe less. Reyes stared at the photograph on the screen. The face she had been hunting for 18 months. The face that visited her nightmares when the medication wasn't strong enough. The face that belonged to the man who had killed 7 members of her team in an ambush that was never supposed to happen. How solid is the intelligence? NSA intercepts confirmed by human assets on the ground. He's there. He's planning. And whatever he's planning involves American targets. Specifics. Unknown. But the chatter mentions demonstration of capability and message to the Crusaders. Standard jihadist rhetoric. But the operational preparation suggests something beyond standard. Team composition. Your original unit plus Delta assets. 12 operators total. Full presidential authorization for any action necessary to neutralize the threat. Presidential authorization. The highest level of operational approval. Reserved for missions that carried implications for national security and international stability. Rules of engagement. Whatever it takes, al-Rashid dies tonight, or he kills Americans tomorrow. Those are the only 2 options. Reyes felt something shift in her chest. For 18 months, she had carried the weight of 7 deaths that she couldn't prevent. 7 teammates who had trusted her to bring them home. 7 families who had received folded flags instead of living fathers, sons, brothers. Now she had a chance to balance that ledger. Not revenge. Justice. There was a difference. ETA to staging area. 4 hours to the forward operating base in Djibouti. Another 6 to the insertion point. Mission window opens at 0200 local time. Brief me on the compound. Cole swiped to the next screen, displaying satellite imagery and tactical overlays that painted a picture of the challenge ahead. Al-Rashid had chosen his location well. Remote terrain. Civilian populations nearby. Limited approach vectors. The kind of defensive positioning that turned surgical strikes into potential massacres. Main structure here. Secondary buildings here and here. Intelligence suggests 12 to 15 armed combatants plus an unknown number of non-combatants. Women, children, human shields. Al-Rashid's specialty. He learned from the best, or the worst, depending on perspective. Reyes studied the imagery with the practiced eye of someone who had planned dozens of similar operations. Every approach had vulnerabilities. Every defensive position had weaknesses. The trick was finding them before the defenders did. What's the extraction plan? Helicopter pickup from this ridge approximately 2 kilometers from the target. Backup extraction point here, in case primary is compromised. Medical support. Corpsman embedded with the team. Kasevac standing by at the forward operating base. And if things go sideways, Cole's expression told her everything she needed to know about that contingency. Then we improvise. The helicopter banked eastward, leaving American airspace behind. Ahead lay hours of transit, followed by hours of preparation, followed by minutes of violence that would determine whether al-Rashid died or continued his campaign of terror. Reyes closed her eyes and let the vibration of the aircraft settle into her bones. Mogadishu played behind her eyelids like a film she couldn't stop watching. The explosion that had turned their convoy into burning wreckage. The screams of men dying in ways that haunted her still. The desperate fight to survive while everything fell apart around her. She had pulled Webb from that wreckage, had dragged him through enemy fire while calling in air support that wasn't supposed to exist, had watched 3 of her teammates die because intelligence had been wrong and al-Rashid had been waiting. 7 dead. 3 survivors. 1 woman who had spent 18 months hunting a ghost. Now the ghost had a location. Now the ghost would die. The forward operating base in Djibouti buzzed with the controlled chaos of military operations preparing for execution. Reyes moved through it with the familiarity of someone who had called such places home more often than any permanent address. Her team was waiting in the briefing room. 11 faces she knew as well as her own. Men who had bled beside her, killed beside her, mourned beside her. Men who understood that what they were about to do would never appear in any history book. "Commander on deck." They rose as one. "Sit down. We don't have time for ceremony." They sat. Reyes activated the tactical display and let the imagery speak for itself. Al-Rashid's compound, the surrounding terrain, the approach vectors, the defensive positions, the civilian complications. "You all know why we're here. 18 months ago, this man killed 7 of our brothers. Tonight, we return the favor." Senior Chief Marcus Torres, her second-in-command, leaned forward. "Rules of engagement. Presidential authorization, whatever it takes. Civilian considerations. Al-Rashid surrounds himself with innocents because he knows we care about them, and he doesn't. We minimize collateral damage where possible. But Al-Rashid dies. That's not negotiable. And if he uses human shields, then we find another way. There's always another way." Petty Officer First Class. Jackson raised his hand. "Commander, what's the intelligence confidence level?" "High. NSA intercepts confirmed by HUMINT. He's there. He's planning something. And whatever it is, it happens within 72 hours. Do we know what? No. But the preparation suggests mass casualty event. American targets. Demonstration of capability." The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. Mass casualty. American targets. The kind of operation that made headlines and changed foreign policy. Questions about the tactical approach. Chief Warrant Officer Reynolds studied the satellite imagery with the practiced eye of a career operator. Insertion point looks exposed. If they have early warning capability, we're walking into a kill zone. They do have early warning capability. Al-Rashid learned from Mogadishu too. He knows how we operate. He knows what we're capable of. He's prepared for us. Then how do we get close enough to matter? Reyes smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. We don't follow the playbook he's expecting. We write a new one. She pulled up an alternative approach vector that made several of the operators inhale sharply. "That's insane," Torres said. "That's unexpected, which is why it's going to work. Commander, that approach takes us through terrain that will shred extraction timelines. If things go wrong, we adapt. That's what we do. That's who we are." Reynolds shook his head slowly. "You're asking us to walk into a situation with limited extraction options against a prepared enemy who knows we're coming. I'm asking you to trust me, the way you trusted me in Mogadishu, the way you've trusted me for 5 years of operations that shouldn't have been possible. Mogadishu got 7 of us killed." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Reyes felt them cut deeper than any knife. "Yes, It did. And I've spent 18 months figuring out what went wrong and how to make sure it never happens again. This approach is the result. It's unconventional. It's risky. And it's the best chance we have of killing al-Rashid without joining him in the grave. Torres met her eyes across the tactical display. You really believe this will work? I believe it's the only thing that will work. Al-Rashid has had 18 months to prepare for the conventional approach. He's expecting us to come at him the way we came at him before. He's not expecting this. Because it's crazy. Because it's creative. There's a difference. Jackson leaned back in his chair. What does the intelligence say about his security detail? 12 to 15 armed combatants, well-trained, well-equipped, veterans of multiple engagements against coalition forces. So we're outnumbered. We're always outnumbered. That's never stopped us before. Reynolds exchanged glances with Torres. Something passed between them, a decision being made without words. Commander, Reynolds said finally, we've followed you into worse situations than this. We'll follow you into this one too. Even though you think I'm crazy, especially because we think you're crazy. The crazy ones are usually right. Reyes felt something loosen in her chest. The weight she had been carrying since Mogadishu shifted slightly. Not gone. Never gone. But shared. Gear up. We move in 4 hours. The team dispersed to their preparations. Weapons checks. Communications tests. The 1,000 small rituals that operators performed before walking into situations where small mistakes had permanent consequences. Reyes stayed behind, staring at al-Rashid's photograph on the tactical display. 18 months. 7 deaths. 1 night to balance the scales. Torres returned to find her still standing there. You okay, Commander? Define okay. Functional enough to lead this mission without getting us killed. By that definition, yes. Good enough. He moved to stand beside her, studying the same photograph she had been staring at. You know this is personal. Yes. You know personal missions get people killed. Yes. You going to let it affect your judgment? Reyes turned to face him, her second in command. Her friend. The man who had been with her longer than anyone else in the unit. Marcus, I've spent 18 months preparing for this moment. Every scenario, every contingency, every way it could go wrong. This isn't personal clouding my judgment. This is personal focusing it. There's a fine line. I know where the line is. I know how to stay on the right side of it. And if you can't, then you take command and finish the mission. Al-Rashid dies. That's the only thing that matters. Torres studied her for a long moment. You really think you might not come back from this? I think the mission is more important than any individual, including me. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. They stood in silence, 2 warriors preparing for battle, knowing that one or both of them might not see another sunrise. For what it's worth, Torres finally said, I believe in you. We all do. Whatever happens tonight, we're with you until the end. Even if the end is a hole in the Yemen desert, especially then. That's what family does. Family. The word carried weight that had nothing to do with blood, and everything to do with shared sacrifice. Thank you, Marcus. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we're drinking beer and watching al-Rashid's obituary on CNN. Deal. The hours passed with the relentless efficiency of military preparation. Weapons were loaded, communications were tested, approach routes were memorized until they could be navigated blindfolded. At 2200 hours, the team boarded the helicopters that would carry them to the insertion point. 12 operators. 1 mission. No margin for error. Reyes sat in the lead aircraft, watching the African coastline disappear into darkness. Ahead lay Yemen. Al-Rashid, the reckoning that had been 18 months in coming. Her hand found the photograph she kept in her vest pocket. 7 faces, 7 names, 7 teammates who would never grow old, never see their children graduate, never hold their grandchildren. "I'm coming," she whispered to the photograph. "Tonight, we finish this." The helicopter banked toward Yemen. The mission had begun. The insertion went wrong almost immediately. They had planned for Al-Rashid's early warning systems. They had planned for his security patrols. They had not planned for the goat herder who stumbled onto their landing zone at exactly the wrong moment. Reyes saw him first. An old man with a weathered face and terrified eyes standing frozen in the rotor wash as 12 armed figures emerged from the darkness like demons from a nightmare. "Contact," she said quietly into her comms. "Civilian. Non-hostile. Orders?" The old man's eyes met hers across the darkness. He saw death standing in front of him. He saw the end of everything he had ever known. He also saw something else, something that made him raise his hands slowly and sink to his knees without being told. Secure him. Quietly. No harm. Jackson moved forward with zip ties and a hood. The old man didn't resist. He had survived enough violence in his life to know when fighting was futile. "What do we do with him?" "He stays here until extraction. Comfortable. Unharmed. We're not here to hurt civilians." "And if he alerts someone, he won't. Look at him. He's been surviving this region his whole life by knowing when to keep quiet. He'll keep quiet." Torres appeared at her shoulder. "This complicates the timeline. It complicates everything. We adapt. The element of surprise was never guaranteed. We proceed as planned. Modified pace, increased caution." And the team moved out, leaving Jackson and one other operator with the old man. 10 remaining. 10 against 15. Worse odds than she'd hoped for. Better than she'd feared. The approach to Al-Rashid's compound took 3 hours instead of the planned 2. Every shadow had to be checked. Every sound had to be evaluated. The terrain was as hostile as the enemy waiting at the end of it. Reyes led from the front the way she always had, the way she always would. Her team flowed behind her like a dark river, each operator knowing exactly where to be and what to do without verbal communication. They reached the observation point at 0147 hours, 13 minutes ahead of the mission window. The compound spread out below them, exactly matching the satellite imagery. Main structure, secondary buildings, the faint glow of lights suggesting activity even at this hour. "Head count," Reyes whispered. "I've got 6 visible. Perimeter patrol pattern consistent with briefing. Interior. Thermal suggests 8 to 10 additional signatures in the main building. 1 isolated signature in the northeast corner. That's our target." Al-Rashid. Alone in his quarters. Probably sleeping. Probably dreaming of the Americans he planned to kill. Secondary buildings. Multiple signatures. Mix of combatants and non-combatants based on size and movement patterns. Children. Confirmed. At least 4 small signatures. Reyes felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Children in the kill zone. Innocents who had no part in Al-Rashid's crimes but would die alongside him if this went wrong. "We go surgical. Main building only. No secondary engagement unless absolutely necessary." "What about the perimeter guards? Neutralize silently. 1 at a time. No alarm." Torres moved up beside her. Commander, the approach to the main building takes us within 10 meters of the secondary structures. If anyone raises an alarm, then we deal with it. But we don't fire on buildings containing children unless there's no other option. Even if it costs us the mission, even then. Al-Rashid dies, but not at the cost of becoming him. There's always another way. The words hung in the darkness like a prayer or a promise. Positions, Reyes ordered. The team split into 3 elements. Alpha for perimeter elimination. Bravo for main building assault. Charlie for extraction support and contingency response. Reyes took point on Bravo. 4 operators, including herself. 4 people to enter a building containing 8 to 10 armed combatants and 1 high-value target who had spent 18 months preparing for exactly this moment. The odds were terrible. The cause was just. That would have to be enough. Alpha, execute. The perimeter guards died in silence. Suppressed weapons, expert marksmanship, the kind of killing that happened so fast the victims never knew they were targets. 6 guards, 6 bodies, 0 alarms. Perimeter clear. Bravo, you're green. Reyes moved toward the main building with her team flowing behind her. Every step brought them closer to Al-Rashid. Every heartbeat counted down toward the moment of reckoning. They reached the entrance without incident. The door was reinforced. Heavy. The kind that took time to breach and made noise that carried. Charges. Negative. Too loud. We find another way. Reynolds pointed toward a window on the 2nd floor. Open. Accessible. Risky. There. That's his quarters. I know. You want to go directly to the target. I want to end this before it becomes a firefight that kills children. Reyes made the decision in the space between heartbeats. Cover me. She moved toward the building's exterior with the silent efficiency of someone who had done this more times than she could count. Her hands found holds in the weathered stone. Her body moved upward with the strength of countless hours of training. The window grew closer. Al-Rashid waited on the other side. 18 months of hunting were about to end. Reyes reached the window ledge and paused, listening. Inside, the sound of breathing. Steady. Rhythmic. The breathing of someone asleep. She eased herself through the opening weapon, ready, every sense straining for the threat that could come from any direction. The room materialized around her, sparse, functional. The quarters of a man who had traded comfort for security. And there, on a mattress against the far wall, lay Jamal al-Rashid, the architect of Mogadishu, the killer of her teammates, the monster who had haunted her nightmares for 18 months. He looked smaller than she remembered, older, more human. She raised her weapon. His eyes opened. For a moment they stared at each other across the darkness. Hunter and hunted. Predator and prey. 2 people whose fates had been intertwined by blood and violence and the terrible arithmetic of war. I knew you'd come, he said. His English was accented but clear. I've been waiting. Then you know how this ends. I know how everything ends. The question is what happens before. His hand moved toward something under his mattress. Reyes fired. The suppressed shot whispered through the room like a secret. Al-Rashid's body jerked once, then went still. Target down, she said into her comms. Confirm. She moved closer, weapon still trained on his motionless form. His eyes stared at the ceiling, seeing nothing. His hand had stopped inches from a detonator wired to enough explosives to level the building. He had a dead man's switch. Copy. Status. Neutralized. He never got the chance. Reyes stood over the body of her enemy and felt something she hadn't expected. Nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. No sense of justice finally served. Just emptiness where 18 months of hatred used to live. "Commander, we need to move. The shot may have been heard." Reyes knelt beside al-Rashid's body and retrieved the intelligence materials scattered around his sleeping area. Plans, maps, names, the details of whatever he had been preparing. "Jackpot," she said. "We've got everything. Exfil in 5. She took one last look at the man who had killed her teammates, the man she had hunted across half the world, the man who would never hurt anyone again. "For Mogadishu," she whispered. Then she turned and moved toward the window. The extraction went smoothly, no pursuit, no complications. The team melted into the darkness as efficiently as they had emerged from it. By the time al-Rashid's people discovered his body, the Americans were already airborne, racing toward the sunrise and the safety of friendly airspace. Reyes sat in the helicopter with the intelligence materials spread across her lap, trying to make sense of what they had recovered. The plans were worse than anyone had imagined. Coordinated attacks across 4 American cities, sleeper cells waiting for activation, a timeline that would have begun in less than 48 hours. "How many people would have died?" Torres asked, reading over her shoulder. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. And now we have names, locations, everything we need to roll up the entire network." Torres let out a long breath. "We did it. We stopped one attack. The war doesn't end." "No, but tonight we won." Reyes looked at the faces of her team, exhausted, relieved, alive, all of them alive. "Yeah," she said quietly, "tonight we won." The helicopter carried them eastward toward Djibouti, and debriefing and the endless paperwork that followed successful operations. Behind them, in a compound that would soon be swarming with investigators, Jamal al-Rashid's body grew cold. Justice had been served. The debt had been paid. And somewhere 7 teammates who would never grow old finally rested in peace. The debriefing at Djibouti lasted 6 hours. Intelligence officers picked apart every detail of the operation with the obsessive precision of people who understood that success today meant nothing if the network survived to strike tomorrow. Reyes answered their questions with the mechanical efficiency of someone running on adrenaline fumes and willpower. Yes, the target was confirmed eliminated. Yes, the intelligence materials were authentic. Yes, the sleeper cell information appeared actionable. No, she didn't need medical attention. No, she didn't need psychological support. No, she wasn't ready to discuss what happened in that room when al-Rashid's eyes opened. "Commander Reyes." The senior intelligence officer leaned forward with the expression of someone about to deliver news that would complicate everything. "We've finished preliminary analysis of the recovered materials. And the attack plans were worse than initial assessment suggested. 4 cities, coordinated detonations, biological components we're still trying to identify. Biological, preliminary indicators suggest weaponized agents. We're talking potential casualty figures in the hundreds of thousands." The number hit Reyes like a physical blow. She had known al-Rashid was planning something catastrophic. She hadn't imagined the scale of what he had been preparing. The sleeper cells. Names and locations for 17 operatives across the continental United States. FBI is already moving on the highest priority targets. We expect to have the network rolled up within 72 hours. 17 operatives. 17 people who had been waiting for a signal that would now never come. 17 potential mass murderers who would spend the rest of their lives in federal custody instead of killing Americans. What about al-Rashid's network overseas? That's where it gets complicated. Reyes felt the familiar weight of complications settling onto her shoulders. Nothing was ever simple. Nothing was ever finished. The war just shifted shape and continued. Explain. Al-Rashid wasn't working alone. The intelligence suggests he was a node in a larger network. Someone was funding him. Someone was providing logistics support. Someone with resources that go beyond what a regional terrorist cell should possess. State actor. Possibly. We're seeing indicators that suggest involvement from at least 2 hostile intelligence services. This wasn't just terrorism. This was asymmetric warfare being conducted through proxy organizations. Torres had been listening from the corner of the room. Now he stepped forward. Are you saying al-Rashid was a puppet? We're saying he was a tool. A very dangerous tool, but a tool nonetheless. The people who were using him are still out there, and they're going to be very unhappy that their operation was disrupted. Reyes processed the implications. Al-Rashid was dead. His immediate network was being dismantled, but the infrastructure that had supported him remained intact. What's the threat assessment? High. We're recommending enhanced security protocols for everyone involved in the operation, including you, Commander. I can take care of myself. With respect, the people we're dealing with have resources that make al-Rashid look like an amateur. State-level intelligence capabilities, professional assassination teams, the kind of reach that can find anyone anywhere. Is that supposed to scare me? It's supposed to make you cautious. You just killed their most valuable asset. They're going to want payback. Reyes stood signaling that the debriefing was over as far as she was concerned. Let them come. I'll be waiting. She walked out of the briefing room before anyone could argue. Torres caught up with her in the corridor. You okay? Define okay. Functional enough to recognize when you're being stupid. Reyes stopped walking. What's that supposed to mean? It means you just told a room full of intelligence professionals that you don't care about state-level threats against your life. That's not courage, Natasha. That's exhaustion talking. She turned to face him, her second in command, her friend, the man who had followed her into hell and back more times than either of them could count. What do you want me to say, Marcus? That I'm scared, that 18 months of hunting al-Rashid has left me running on empty, that killing him didn't feel like I thought it would. I want you to say you're human, that's all. I'm human. I'm also tired, and I want to go home. Home doesn't exist for people like us. You know that. Then I want to go somewhere that isn't here, somewhere I can sleep without seeing his face every time I close my eyes. Torres was quiet for a long moment. It doesn't go away. You know that, too. I know, but maybe it gets quieter. Maybe. And they stood in the corridor, 2 warriors who had just won a battle, but knew the war would never truly end. What happens now? Torres asked. Now we go back to Coronado. I finish my evaluation report. Lawson faces court-martial. The world keeps turning. And the state actors who were backing al-Rashid. Someone else's problem, at least for now. You really believe that? Reyes didn't answer. They both knew she didn't. The flight back to the United States took 14 hours. Reyes spent most of it staring out the window at clouds that looked like cotton stretched across infinity. Her phone buzzed with a message from an encrypted channel she rarely used. Congratulations on the successful operation. Your country owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Admiral Morrison. She read the message twice, then deleted it. Debts that couldn't be repaid. That was the currency of her profession. You gave everything you had, and if you were lucky, you got to keep breathing long enough to give some more. Another message arrived. This one from a number she didn't recognize. We know who you are. We know where you live. We know everyone you love. This isn't over." Reyes felt something cold settle into her chest. Not fear exactly, more like recognition. The intelligence officers had warned her. Now the warning was becoming reality. She forwarded the message to the appropriate security channels and tried to convince herself that it was just empty threats from people who had lost their most valuable asset. She almost succeeded. Coronado looked exactly the same as it had when she left. The Pacific Ocean still crashed against the same coastline. The training facilities still hummed with the same energy. The SEALs still ran the same drills with the same intensity. But something had changed. Reyes felt it the moment she stepped onto the base. Conversations stopped when she approached. Eyes followed her movements with a mixture of respect and curiosity that hadn't been there before. The story of what happened in the warehouse had spread. "Commander Reyes," she turned to find Lieutenant Commander Thornton approaching with a file folder in his hands and an expression that suggested complicated news. "Lieutenant Commander, what's the status?" "Lawson's court-martial is scheduled for next month. Hayes has accepted administrative discipline and psychological evaluation. Davis, Murphy, and Thompson have completed their retraining and returned to duty. And the 3 SEALs who were involved. They've requested to speak with you, privately." Reyes felt a flicker of something that might have been surprise. "Why?" "They wouldn't say, but they've been asking every day since you left." "Where are they?" "Waiting in the briefing room, if you're willing to see them." Reyes considered refusing. She had no obligation to these men. They had participated in an attempt on her life even if they had been following orders they believed were legitimate. But something in Thornton's expression told her this was important. "Lead the way." Davis, Murphy, and Thompson stood at attention when she entered the briefing room. Their faces carried the weight of men who had spent the past week confronting the consequences of their choices. At ease. They relaxed, but only slightly. "You wanted to see me." Davis stepped forward as the apparent spokesman for the group. "Ma'am, we wanted to apologize. What happened in that warehouse was wrong. We should have questioned the orders. We should have recognized that something wasn't right. We didn't, and you could have died because of our failure." Reyes studied him carefully. The words sounded rehearsed, but the emotion behind them was genuine. "You were following orders from a superior you trusted. That's not a crime." It felt like one. "It should. That's how you know you're still human." Murphy spoke next. "Ma'am, we heard about what you did. The operation in Yemen, stopping the attack that would have killed all those people. Classified information travels fast. SEALs talk, especially about people who've earned respect. Is that what this is about?" "Respect?" Thompson finally found his voice. "Ma'am, we came here because we wanted you to know that we understand now. What real leadership looks like, what real strength looks like. We spent years following Lawson because we thought intimidation was the same as authority. You showed us the difference. In a few hours. In a few hours. Some lessons don't take long when the teacher is good enough." Reyes felt something shift in her chest. These men had tried to help kill her. Now they were standing in front of her vulnerable and honest, asking for something she wasn't sure she could give. "What do you want from me?" Davis met her eyes directly. "Nothing, ma'am. We just wanted you to know that what happened changed us, made us better, and if there's ever anything we can do to earn back the honor we lost that day, we're ready. Honor isn't earned back. It's rebuilt. One decision at a time." "Yes, ma'am." "You want to rebuild, start by being the kind of leaders who would never follow those orders in the first place. Be the people who recognize when authority becomes corruption. Be the SEALs who protect the innocent instead of threatening them." "Yes, ma'am." "Now get out of here. You've got training to complete." They filed out, but Davis paused at the door. "Ma'am, for what it's worth, I'm glad you came back." "So am I, Corporal. So am I." Webb was waiting outside when she emerged from the briefing room. "Commander?" "Petty Officer, you have a habit of appearing when I don't expect you." "Occupational hazard. Can we talk? We are talking. Privately." Reyes considered the request. Webb had taken risks for her, had broken classification protocols to acknowledge their shared history, had run to find help when he suspected she was in danger. "Walk with me." They moved toward the waterfront where the Pacific Ocean provided enough ambient noise to defeat casual eavesdropping. "What's on your mind?" "The message you received. The threat." Reyes stopped walking. "How do you know about that?" "I have friends in signals intelligence. They flagged it as soon as it came through." "That's classified information." "Yes, ma'am, it is." "You could lose your career for accessing it." "I could lose a lot more than that. But you saved my life in Mogadishu. I figure that buys some reciprocal concern." Reyes studied him carefully. The earnest expression, the genuine worry, the willingness to risk everything for someone who had done the same for him. "What do you know?" "The message originated from a server cluster in Moscow, routed through proxy networks in 6 countries. The tradecraft is consistent with SVR operations." "Russian intelligence?" "Yes, ma'am. They're not happy about al-Rashid. Apparently he was more valuable to them than anyone realized." "The state actor involvement?" "Confirmed. Al-Rashid was a Russian asset. They were using him to destabilize American interests in the region and create conditions for expanded influence. And now they want revenge. Now they want to make an example, show anyone else who might consider interfering with their operations that there are consequences." Reyes felt the cold weight in her chest grow heavier. Russian intelligence services didn't make empty threats. They followed through with professional precision and plausible deniability. "What's the threat assessment?" "Serious. They've already identified your family members, your former addresses, your known associates." "I don't have family." "You have teammates, friends, people you care about. Torres, Cole, Reynolds, Jackson, the men who had followed her into Yemen and brought her home. They would target my team. They would target anyone who matters to you. That's how they operate. Make the cost personal. Make it hurt." Reyes stared at the Pacific Ocean, watching waves crash against rocks that had endured for millennia. The water didn't care about Russian intelligence services or terrorist networks or the endless war that consumed everyone who entered it. The water just kept moving. "What do you recommend?" "Enhanced security for your team members, counterintelligence monitoring for threat indicators, and maybe consider disappearing for a while." "Disappearing. You've done it before. Mogadishu wasn't your first black operation. You know how to become invisible when necessary." "Running isn't my style." "Neither is getting your teammates killed because you were too proud to take precautions." The words hit harder than she expected. Because Webb was right, This wasn't just about her anymore. The people who wanted revenge would hurt everyone around her to make their point. "I'll take it under advisement." "That's not good enough, Commander." "It's all I've got right now, Petty Officer." Webb's expression hardened. "Permission to speak freely. Granted. You spent 18 months hunting al-Rashid because he killed your teammates. Now you're willing to let the same thing happen again because you're too stubborn to admit you need help. That's not strength. That's ego. And ego gets people killed." The accusation hung in the air between them. "Are you finished?" "No, ma'am. I'm not. You saved my life. You gave me a future I didn't think I was going to have. I'm not going to stand by and watch you throw yours away because you think you're invincible." I don't think I'm invincible. Then act like it. Take the threat seriously. Let people help you. Reyes was quiet for a long moment. The waves continued their endless assault on the rocks. The sun continued its journey toward the horizon. The world continued turning regardless of the drama playing out on its surface. You really care about this. I really care about you, Commander. We all do. Why? Because you're worth caring about. Because you lead with honor instead of fear. Because you give second chances to people who don't deserve them. Lawson didn't get a second chance. Lawson tried to murder you. The others made mistakes. There's a difference. Reyes thought about Davis Murphy and Thompson, the apology they had offered, the genuine desire to be better than they had been. Maybe there is. So what are you going to do? I'm going to finish my evaluation report. I'm going to testify at Lawson's court-martial, and I'm going to let the counterintelligence people do their jobs. And if the Russians make a move, then I'll deal with it, the way I've dealt with everything else. Alone. Not alone, not anymore. Webb's expression softened slightly. That's all I needed to hear. Good. Now get back to your duties before someone notices you've been gone. Yes, ma'am. He turned to leave, then paused. Commander, one more thing. What? Welcome home. The words carried warmth that had nothing to do with California sunshine. Thank you, Petty Officer. It's good to be back. Webb disappeared around the corner of a building, leaving Reyes alone with the ocean and her thoughts. Home. She had told Torres that home didn't exist for people like them. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe home wasn't a place. Maybe it was people who cared whether you lived or died. Her phone buzzed with another message. Evaluation report due in 48 hours. Looking forward to your findings. Admiral Morrison. Reyes smiled despite everything. Work never ended. Threats never disappeared. The war never stopped. But somewhere in the middle of all that darkness, there were moments of light. Teammates who became family. Enemies who became lessons. Strangers who became friends. She started walking back toward the administrative building where a report waited to be written and a court-martial waited to be influenced. Lawson would face justice. The SEALs would learn from what happened. And Commander Natasha Reyes would continue doing what she had always done, leading from the front, fighting for what mattered, and never ever letting the bastards win. The evaluation report took her 3 hours to write. 15 pages of detailed observations, recommendations, and findings that would reshape training protocols at Coronado for years to come. She submitted it at exactly 23:47 hours, then sat in her temporary quarters and stared at the wall for a long time. Al-Rashid was dead. His network was being dismantled. The attack he had planned would never happen. But the Russians were angry. The war was continuing. And somewhere out there, people were making plans that would eventually require her attention. Tonight, though, she was going to sleep. Tomorrow she would start fighting again. That was the life she had chosen. The life that had chosen her. And she wouldn't have it any other way. The court-martial of Master Chief Petty Officer Derek Lawson began on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other day at Naval Station San Diego. But inside Courtroom 3, history was being written in testimony and evidence that would reshape how the Navy dealt with abuse of authority. Reyes sat in the witness gallery watching Lawson enter in his dress uniform. 15 years of service. Medals that spoke to courage under fire. A record that should have ended with honor instead of handcuffs. He looked older than he had 3 weeks ago. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by something that might have been resignation, or might have been hatred buried beneath layers of military discipline. Their eyes met across the courtroom. Lawson looked away first. "All rise." The military judge took her seat with the practiced efficiency of someone who had presided over hundreds of similar proceedings. Captain Margaret Chen had a reputation for fairness that bordered on ruthlessness. She didn't care about rank or reputation. She cared about truth. This court-martial is convened to hear charges against Master Chief Petty Officer Derek Lawson, United States Navy. The charges are as follows: attempted murder of a federal officer, conspiracy to commit murder, abuse of authority, conduct unbecoming, and violation of general orders regarding treatment of personnel under evaluation. The prosecutor stood. Commander William Hayes. No relation to Senior Chief Warren Hayes, carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew his case was airtight. The government is prepared to proceed, Your Honor. Defense. Lawson's attorney, Lieutenant Commander Patricia Morrison, rose with considerably less confidence. The defense is prepared, Your Honor. Very well. Opening statements. The prosecution laid out the case with methodical precision. The confrontation in the training yard, the escalation of hostility, the conspiracy to isolate Commander Reyes, the attempt to murder her under the pretext of neutralizing a foreign agent. Each piece of evidence dropped into place like stones building a wall around Lawson's future. When the prosecution called Reyes to the stand, the courtroom fell silent. She walked to the witness box with the same calm efficiency she brought to everything else. Her uniform was immaculate. Her bearing was perfect. Her eyes never left the prosecution's as she was sworn in. Commander Reyes, please describe your assignment at Naval Special Warfare Command on the date in question. I was conducting an authorized evaluation of operational readiness and personnel conduct under protocols established by Joint Special Operations Command. And what was your first interaction with the defendant? Master Chief Lawson approached me while I was observing morning formations. He made inappropriate comments regarding my gender and assumed civilian status. What was the nature of these comments? He referred to me as sweetheart and suggested I was looking for the gift shop. The tone was dismissive and designed to humiliate. How did you respond? I informed him that I was exactly where I needed to be. And his reaction? Escalation. He became increasingly hostile as I demonstrated knowledge that contradicted his assumptions about my identity and capabilities. The testimony continued for 2 hours. Reyes recounted every detail of the confrontation, the warehouse trap, and the combat that followed. Her voice remained steady throughout, professional and precise. When the defense began cross-examination, Morrison approached carefully. Commander Reyes, isn't it true that you deliberately concealed your identity and authority during this evaluation? I did not display visible credentials. That's standard protocol for operational assessments. But you could have revealed your identity at any point and prevented this situation from escalating. Yes. Then why didn't you? Reyes paused. The courtroom held its breath. Because revealing my identity would have changed Master Chief Lawson's behavior without changing his character. He would have treated me with respect because of my rank, not because I deserved it as a person. The evaluation was designed to assess how personnel respond to situations where authority isn't immediately apparent. So you deliberately allowed the situation to escalate. I allowed Master Chief Lawson to make choices that revealed his true nature. The choices were his. The consequences are his. Morrison pressed harder. Commander, isn't it possible that Master Chief Lawson genuinely believed you were a foreign agent, that his actions, while misguided, were motivated by legitimate security concerns? If Master Chief Lawson believed I was a foreign agent, proper protocol required him to report his concerns through official channels and request federal investigation. Instead, he isolated me from witnesses, disabled monitoring equipment, and stated his intention to kill me in a way that would be recorded as a training accident. He said those exact words. He said threats to national security get handled in ways that don't involve lawyers or congressional oversight. The implication was clear. Implication isn't proof. His weapon in my face was proof, counselor. The defense had no further questions. The prosecution called additional witnesses. Corporal Davis testified about the orders he received and the discomfort he felt following them. Senior Chief Hayes, facing his own disciplinary proceedings, confirmed that Lawson had explicitly discussed killing Reyes before anyone could verify her identity. Lieutenant Commander Thornton described the federal communications that revealed Reyes's true identity and the horror he felt realizing how close Lawson had come to murdering a superior officer. Petty Officer Webb testified about Mogadishu, revealing classified information under court seal that demonstrated Reyes's history of heroism and the personal connection that had motivated his intervention. When the evidence phase concluded, Captain Chen called a recess before closing arguments. Reyes found herself standing outside the courtroom staring at the Pacific Ocean and wondering if justice would actually be served. "Commander." She turned to find Lawson standing 10 feet away, his escort waiting at a respectful distance. "Master Chief, I wanted to say something. Before this ends. I'm not sure there's anything left to say." "There is." Lawson's voice carried something it hadn't contained before, something that might have been regret. "I was wrong. About you. About women in combat. About what strength looks like. That's not an apology. No, it's an admission. Apologies are words. Admissions are truths." Reyes studied him carefully. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something broken, but possibly something that could be rebuilt. "Why did you hate me so much before you even knew who I was?" "Because you represented everything I was afraid of. Change, challenge, the possibility that everything I believed about myself and my place in this world was wrong. And now I know it was wrong. I built my identity on being the strongest person in any room. You showed me that strength isn't about physical dominance or intimidation. It's about something else entirely. What? I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out. However many years they give me, I'm going to spend them understanding what you showed me that day. You tried to kill me. Yes. And you could have killed me. You didn't. That's been keeping me awake at night, trying to understand why. Because killing you wouldn't have taught anyone anything. Mercy sometimes accomplishes what justice cannot. Is that what this is, mercy? This is consequences. You're going to prison because you tried to commit murder. What you do with that time is up to you." Lawson was quiet for a long moment. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not for what happened in the courtroom. For what happened in my head that made me think any of it was acceptable. That's closer to an apology. It's the best I've got." The escort approached, indicating that recess was ending. "Master Chief, one more thing." "Yes. The men who followed you. Davis, Murphy, Thompson. They came to me after you were arrested. They apologized. They asked how to be better. What did you tell them?" "I told them to be the kind of leaders who would never follow those orders in the first place." Lawson nodded slowly. "Good advice. Maybe you should have taken it 15 years ago. Maybe I should have." They led him back into the courtroom. Reyes followed a moment later, taking her seat in the gallery as closing arguments began. The verdict came 3 hours later. Guilty on all counts. The sentence came the following day. 25 years in military prison. Dishonorable discharge. Forfeiture of all pay and allowances. Reduction in rank. to E1. Everything Lawson had built over 15 years of service destroyed in a single morning because he couldn't accept that a woman might be his equal. As they led him away, he looked back at Reyes one final time. She nodded. He nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness, but it might have been the beginning of understanding. 6 months later, Reyes stood in a different courtroom, this time receiving a medal she hadn't asked for and didn't want. The Navy Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor, awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat during the Yemen operation. Admiral Morrison pinned it to her chest, while 200 people applauded and cameras recorded every moment. For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action, he read from the citation. Commander Reyes led a surgical strike against a high-value terrorist target, personally neutralizing the threat and recovering intelligence that prevented coordinated attacks against American citizens. Her action saved an estimated 100,000 lives. 100,000 lives. The number still felt abstract. Impossible. Too large to comprehend. But the faces of her teammates were real. Torres standing in the front row grinning like a proud father. Reynolds and Jackson flanking him. Cole wiping something from his eye that he would later insist was dust. Webb was there too. Officially, he had no connection to the classified operations being honored. Unofficially, he had become family. "Speech," someone called from the crowd. Reyes looked at the medal on her chest, then at the faces watching her expectantly. "I'm not good at speeches." Laughter. "But I'll say this. The work we do doesn't happen because of individuals. It happens because of teams. The people standing in this room, the people who couldn't be here, the people who will never be recognized for what they've sacrificed." She thought about the 7 teammates who died in Mogadishu, about the old goat herder who had stumbled onto their insertion point and kept quiet because he understood survival, about Davis Murphy and Thompson, who had learned something valuable from their worst mistake. We do this work because someone has to. Because the alternative is unacceptable. Because there are people in this world who want to hurt innocent civilians, and the only thing standing between them and success is us. Her voice cracked slightly. I wear this medal for everyone who can't wear their own. For the fallen. For the forgotten. For the ones who gave everything and asked for nothing in return. Silence. That's all I've got. The applause was thunderous. After the ceremony, Torres found her hiding in a maintenance corridor, away from the crowds and cameras. "You okay? I hate ceremonies." "I know. That's why I brought this." He handed her a bottle of beer already opened. "You smuggled alcohol into a Navy ceremony." "I smuggled alcohol into a classified black site in Afghanistan once. This was nothing." Reyes laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised both of them. "What happens now?" "Now we go back to work. The Russians are still angry. The networks al-Rashid was part of are still operating. The war doesn't stop because we won one battle." "I know. But tonight we celebrate, because that's what families do." "Families. That's what we are, Natasha, whether you like it or not." She took a long drink from the bottle. "I like it." "Good. Now come on. Your team is waiting." And Webb brought cake. Webb brought cake, apparently his grandmother's recipe. He's been talking about it for weeks. Reyes followed Torres back toward the reception where her teammates were gathered around a table covered with food and drinks, and the kind of chaotic energy that only came from people who had survived impossible things together. Reynolds was telling a story that made Jackson choke on his beer. Cole was arguing with the Admiral's aide about proper aircraft maintenance procedures. Webb was carefully slicing a cake that looked like it belonged in a professional bakery. Reyes stood at the edge of the group watching them. Her team, her family, the people who would follow her into hell and fight beside her until the flames consumed them all. "Commander." Webb noticed her standing there. "Come get some cake before these animals eat everything." She walked over and accepted the plate he offered. "This is really your grandmother's recipe. 3 generations of Cuban baking secrets. Don't tell anyone or I'll have to kill you." "I think I can keep a secret." "I know you can. That's why I like you." The cake was incredible, sweet and dense and perfect in ways that military food never managed to be. "Webb, you're in the wrong profession. What special operations doesn't need bakers? I'm just saying you have options." "Commander, my option is standing right here, with my team, where I belong." The words carried weight that had nothing to do with cake or careers. "Glad to hear it. Besides, someone has to watch your back. You have a habit of walking into warehouses full of people who want to kill you." "That was one time. That we know of." Torres raised his beer. "To the commander, who taught us that real strength has nothing to do with how hard you can hit." "To the commander," the team echoed. Reyes felt something warm spread through her chest. Not the beer, not the cake. Something deeper. "To the team," she said, "who taught me that I don't have to carry everything alone." They drank. Outside, the sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that looked like fire, but felt like peace. Somewhere in the world, enemies were planning. Threats were developing. The next mission was already taking shape in classified briefing rooms, but tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight was for family. Tomorrow, they would save the world again. 1 year later, Reyes stood at the memorial wall in a classified facility that officially didn't exist, running her fingers across 7 names that would never appear in any public record. The first anniversary of the Yemen operation. The first anniversary of justice for Mogadishu. "Hey guys," she said quietly. "I kept my promise. Al-Rashid is gone. The network is destroyed. The attacks he planned never happened." Silence. The names didn't respond. They never would. "I wish you could have been there. I wish you could have seen him realize that everything he built was about to come crashing down." She touched each name individually. Martinez, Kowalski, Williams, Jackson, Rodriguez, Thompson, Chen. 7 names, 7 lives, 7 teammates who would never grow old. "I'm still carrying you with me, every mission, every decision, every time I have to choose between the easy path and the right one." A sound behind her. Torres standing at a respectful distance. "They'd be proud of you. They'd tell me to stop being dramatic and buy them a beer." "That too." Reyes turned away from the wall. "Any word on the Russian situation?" "Intelligence suggests they've moved on to other priorities. Apparently losing al-Rashid cost them more than just an asset. It cost them credibility with their partners." "Good. The threat isn't gone, just postponed." "Threats are always postponed. That's the nature of this work. Speaking of which, Admiral Morrison wants to see you." "About new assignment, something big. He wouldn't give details over unsecured channels." Reyes looked back at the memorial wall one more time. Duty calls. Always does. They walked out of the facility together, leaving the names behind, but carrying the memories forward. Admiral Morrison was waiting in a secure briefing room with files spread across the table that carried classification markings Reyes had rarely seen. "Commander, thank you for coming." What's the situation, Admiral? We've identified a new threat, bigger than al-Rashid, more sophisticated, more dangerous. State actor, consortium, multiple hostile intelligence services working together. They're calling it Project Prometheus. Objectives, unknown. But the indicators suggest they're planning something that makes al-Rashid's attacks look like amateur hour. Reyes studied the files. Names she didn't recognize, locations she'd never heard of, a web of connections that spanned continents and crossed every boundary that was supposed to separate enemies from allies. What do you need from me? Leadership, a new task group, hand-picked operators for missions that will push every boundary we have. Rules of engagement. Presidential authorization, same as Yemen, same, whatever it takes. Timeline. We're already behind. They've been building this for years while we were focused on individual threats like al-Rashid. Now we're playing catch-up. Reyes looked at the files, then at the Admiral, then at Torres, who had followed her into the briefing room. I'll need my team. Your team is already being reassigned. Full operational authority. Within classified parameters, yes. And if I fail, you won't. How do you know? Because I've seen what you're capable of, and I've seen what happens to people who underestimate you. Reyes thought about Lawson sitting in military prison, paying for the mistake of assuming that strength and authority looked a certain way. She thought about al-Rashid dead in a compound in Yemen, paying for the mistake of believing that terror could triumph over determination. She thought about Davis Murphy and Thompson, rebuilding their careers one ethical decision at a time. She thought about Webb, who had risked everything to acknowledge a debt he felt he owed. She thought about the 7 names on the memorial wall, who would never see what their sacrifice had made possible. I'm in. I knew you would be. When do we start? You already have. Admiral Morrison handed her a folder with a single name on the cover. Your first target. The architect of Project Prometheus. We believe he's the key to unraveling the entire network. Reyes opened the folder and stared at the photograph inside. The face looking back at her was familiar. Too familiar. Admiral, I know who it is, Commander. That's why I need you. The photograph showed a man she had trusted, a man who had served beside her, a man who had been at her medal ceremony applauding with everyone else, a man who had apparently been working for the enemy the entire time. How long have you known? We suspected for months, confirmed last week. Does he know we know? Not yet. That's your advantage. Reyes closed the folder. I'll need time to plan. You have 48 hours. After that, we assume he'll be warned and disappear. Understood. She walked out of the briefing room with the folder in her hand and a weight in her chest that felt like betrayal and determination mixed together. Torres was waiting outside. Bad news. The worst kind. Want to talk about it? Not yet. I need to think. Whatever you need, I'm here. I know. That's the only thing keeping me from falling apart right now. Reyes walked toward the exit, her mind already racing through possibilities and contingencies and the terrible arithmetic of what had to happen next. Behind her, the memorial wall held 7 names in silence. Ahead of her, a new mission waited. And somewhere in between, a woman who had learned that true strength lay not in dominance, but in determination, prepared to do what she had always done. Lead from the front, fight for what mattered, and never ever let the bastards win. The war wasn't over. It was never over. But as long as there were people willing to stand in the darkness and hold the line, the light would survive. Commander Natasha Reyes was one of those people, and she was just getting started. Because in the end, it wasn't about medals or recognition or the approval of people who would never understand what the job required. It was about the quiet ones. The ones who carried the weight so others didn't have to. The ones who fought in shadows so others could live in light. The ones who never asked for thanks and never expected glory. The ones who simply did what needed to be done, whatever the cost, whatever the sacrifice, whatever the price. Never judge the quiet ones. They might be carrying the way home,